4 million. That's the number of people estimated to be out of work due to long COVID, the lingering symptoms that plague almost 16 million working Americans. An economic drag that could cost the United States over $3 trillion in spending related to decreased quality of life, earnings, and medical expenses. These are the faces of long COVID, suffering from the same illness, but unemployed for different reasons.
Short-term memory issues, multitasking is very tough, speech is tough at times, finding the right words. Physically, I'm in a ton of pain. Right now, speaking to you, it feels as though someone's drilling into my head and my face at the same time.
Matthew Boyd is a 33-year-old Manhattan long hauler, having contracted COVID 5 times. He was previously hired as a senior manager at Landis, a home ownership platform headquartered in New York.
So walk me through that hiring process and if they had known you had these medical conditions.
Yeah, so before I accepted the offer, before I signed anything, I said, hey, by the way, I don't feel comfortable going to the office every day right now. And they're fine with it.
So they did know that you had long COVID?
I didn't go into specifics, but I said long COVID and I've had COVID several times.
Boyd was hired late August of last year and stayed for about 2 months until he says his situation changed.
My boss expressed desire for me to want me to come in, suggestions. It made me feel like he was like testing me.
Boyd presented his boss previous NBC New York reporting on his condition, to which he says things took a quick turn.
Then I noticed after that the relationship was definitely strained. After that was when they assigned me a project where I was set up to fail. I'm a decently smart person, but I can't figure out what I don't know.
Less than 10 days later, without warning, Boyd says he received a meeting request with his manager in HR.
They basically said I was terminated immediately, and I asked them, what was the reasoning for this? And they brought up, look, coming along too slow. And again, I've been working on this project for 9 days.
So do you feel that you were discriminated against because of your disability?
100%.
Boyd says the company offered him $5,000 if he signed a non-disclosure agreement. He did not sign, and instead has recently filed a complaint to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission claiming employment discrimination.
NBC New York reached out to Landis for comment, and the company replied, Landis does not publicly disclose its current or former employees' confidential human resources information. But we can confirm that Mr. Boyd's purported COVID-19 condition played no role and was not connected in any way to his separation from employment with Landis. These types of legal cases are becoming more prevalent, according to James DeSimone, a Los Angeles attorney representing long COVID patients.
Well, I think employers have to take note of the disability laws that protect employees. Long-term COVID, and it's interfering with their breathing, their ability to sleep, their ability to concentrate. The company has an obligation to engage in the interactive process and try to find out how can we have this person do the job with reasonable accommodations, and that's their obligation under the law.
It raises the question, what defines long COVID as a disability under U.S. labor laws?
People with long COVID, just like other folks with chronic health conditions, may be considered a person with a disability under our Americans with Disabilities Act or our ADA. The key to the definition around what is a disability is to think about it not as the diagnosis, but rather what is the impact of that condition.
And we've gathered patients and providers and state and local health officials and some of our federal health leaders together to have this really important conversation.
There seems to be, I don't want to call it a loophole, but there seems to be a blurry line between, is long COVID a disability? Does the employer see it as such?
Well, there is some stigma connected with it too, because not everybody in Congress believes that long COVID is a thing. Sadly, there are some, and I've heard them say this, in committee hearings. Well, I'm not so sure it's a thing. It's one thing to not be accommodated. It's another thing to not even be listened to and thus not be accommodated.
Navigating the new normal workforce is a challenge, especially for those who understand their setbacks, left wondering, when will the next start date begin?
Unfortunately, I had to choose my life over my career. I have to be very careful with post-exertional malaise. It can lead to permanent disabling. But unfortunately, laws is just not caught up with what we need for long haulers.
While the exact amount has not been estimated, similar conditions like chronic fatigue syndrome could cost a person $9,000 annually, according to the Journal of the American Medical Association. How much have you spent already?
Tens of thousands. I mean, would be in the millions if I wasn't insured.
Within 3 months of my getting sick and having been in the hospital and having no income, we had to make a decision. So we ended up selling our home so that we could have some money to pay down debt and to have some money to live on.
After contracting COVID in March of 2020, Jibo says her boss would not lay her off, despite unknowns and her wish to file for unemployment.
And when I got out of the hospital, I had to keep going back at him to get him to finally just say, I'm laid off.
I applied for disability July of 2020, and I'm fighting an appeal still. I have, the diagnosis code, but now that I have the long COVID diagnosis, I'm hoping that will help.
What do you do if you're suffering from long COVID and risking your employment? There are free resources that you can consider first. The U.S. Department of Labor has a system called JAM, the Job Accommodation Network. Employers can benefit from accommodation toolkits and suggested practices.
Something that we will continue to struggle with over time is that people contacting JAM may not identify their issues as being COVID related.
This network has about 40,000 technical assistance requests per year. Around 80% of those are related to issues about retaining or returning to work after illness or injury. Reporting for News 4 New York, I'm Linda Gaudino.